Brentford was the kind of town where people still left their doors unlocked. A quiet patch of countryside tucked between rolling hills and slow, sighing roads, it rarely made headlines, except maybe for the annual bake sale or when Mrs. Dobbin's cat went missing. Life here wasn't glamorous, but it was predictable, and people liked it that way. It was a town stitched together by old habits and neighborly rituals. You knew which corner the school kids gathered at, which evenings the bakery threw out day-old pastries, and which houses gave out full-size chocolate bars at Halloween. In Brentford, everything and everyone had its place. That's why, when something horrible finally did happen, it tore through the town like a jagged rip through old cloth. Declan Murphy was, by every local measure, irreplaceable. Not flashy, not boastful, just good. Genuinely, disarmingly good. He ran the Sunday charity breakfasts at the church with military efficiency and fatherly warmth. He offered free music lessons to kids who needed somewhere to go after school. He made weekly visits to elderly neighbors and took the time to remember not just their ailments but their stories. He was a man whose kindness didn't feel performative. He didn't collect praise like others might. He just showed up, day after day, rain or shine, which made his disappearance all the more chilling. It wasn't just that he missed breakfast that Sunday. It was that he never missed anything. At first, people assumed the best. Maybe he was unwell. Maybe his phone had died. But as the morning stretched on with no sign of Declan, tension rippled through the town. Calls went unanswered, messages unread. And then came Mrs. Cartwright, slippers on the wrong feet, voice trembling as she dialed the police. What officers found inside Declan's flat was worse than anything Brentford had ever imagined. His body lay face down in the hallway, inches from the door. He'd been stabbed with terrifying force, again and again, in the chest, neck, and arms. The carpet was soaked. The walls were splashed. A shattered lamp cast sharp shadows over the scene. One shoe lay in a corner, its partner missing. A struggle had clearly taken place. But the door? Locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry. No broken window. Which meant only one thing. Declan had opened the door himself. Detective Chief Inspector Rachel Hargreaves was called in by the Met. She brought with her experience and an understanding that murders like this weren't random. Her second-in-command, DS Arjun Mehta, was more reserved, more observant, often catching details others dismissed. The scene was meticulously combed. Forensics collected blood samples, fingerprints, fibers, and photos. But something stood out. The flat had been cleaned, selectively. The kitchen counters gleamed. Light switches were wiped. Handles too. Yet other things, personal photos, Declan's diary, had been moved, not taken. Someone had tried to erase their presence but wasn't perfect. The first name that surfaced was Anthony Lowell, a part-time gardener with a bit of a past. He'd worked in Declan's yard weeks earlier. He had a reputation, not for violence, but for being unreliable. That was enough for suspicion to bloom. The media latched on quickly, but his alibi was concrete. Security footage and shift logs proved he'd worked all night. He was let go, but the stain lingered. Next came Daniel Cross, a student renting 2 doors down. He and Declan had clashed once over loud music. Voices were raised. Neighbors remembered. But Daniel was in Brighton that weekend, confirmed by photos, train tickets, and a live stream from his girlfriend's apartment. Then the investigation turned toward Marcus Hale, Declan's best friend since boyhood. An anonymous call claimed the two had fought recently, something about betrayal. The idea shocked Brentford. Marcus had always been loyal, but when police questioned him, he broke, not from guilt, but grief. His alibi, a religious retreat, held. Another dead end. With every cleared suspect, the town grew more restless. People who once waved now crossed the street. Gossip replaced trust. Something was wrong in Brentford, and no one felt safe. The real shift came when the detectives unearthed a little-known report Declan had filed 6 weeks earlier. He had reported a car, a dark vehicle that idled outside his home at night. The driver never emerged, never interacted, just watched. The report had been dismissed as low risk. In a bigger city, that might not raise eyebrows. In Brentford, it should have set alarms ringing. Then Sarah Flynn walked into the station, drenched and pale, reporting something eerily similar. A man had been following her for weeks, watching from his car, appearing outside her gym, her flat. She handed over a license plate number. It led to Williams Morgan. Williams Morgan seemed harmless enough. Lived alone in a basement flat just outside town. Former IT technician. No criminal history. No social connections. To neighbors, he was a ghost. Polite, quiet, forgettable. But under his bed, police found the truth. A locked box contained damning evidence. Candid photos of Declan, one of his gloves, and notebooks filled with detailed observations. Times Declan left his house. Places he went. People he spoke to. But the most disturbing were the handwritten thoughts. Too kind to be real. Smile is fake. Must be hiding something. They all believe him. That makes him dangerous. Remove the mask. Declan wasn't Morgan's only subject. There were files on others too. But Declan had clearly become the center of a twisted obsession. Morgan wasn't insane in the legal sense. He was disturbed, paranoid, but calculated. Forensic psychologists revealed he had developed a warped belief system over the years. A theory that extreme kindness was always a lie. A performance. A manipulation tactic. He believed it was his mission to expose those who wore this mask. Declan, in his unwavering goodness, became the target of this delusion. Not because of anything he did wrong, but precisely because he did everything right. Morgan believed Declan was hiding something, and when he found nothing, he saw it as proof of how dangerous Declan really was. Morgan was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. In court, he claimed mental illness, but the jury saw through it. He had cleaned the scene, destroyed evidence, followed his victim for months. That wasn't a man who snapped. That was a man who planned. It took less than a day for the jury to convict him. Life in prison. No parole for 30 years. But justice didn't bring healing. Not really. Brentford would never be the same. Declan's name was cleared, his memory honored, but the damage spread beyond him. Anthony Lowell's business never recovered. Daniel Cross transferred to another university. Marcus Hale left town in silence. Mrs. Cartwright became a recluse, her curtains drawn day and night. The town square now holds a memorial. A carved stone, simple and solemn. Flowers appear every Sunday, some fresh, some fading. The inscription reads, Declan Murphy, a good man, a kind soul, taken too soon. We remember not just how he died, but how he lived.